Hello everyone, my name is S Comic Maker, and in today's video we're going to attempt to make an animation cell using things I have in my art room. For this experiment I used clear plastic sleeves, an X-Acto knife, scissors, computer paper, but you can use whatever paper that you have that can be used with a light box, tape, a light table, canson mixed media paper, copic markers, copic liner pens, and Posca pens. I came up with this the other day when I was thinking about when I was a kid and what I wanted to do when I grow up. You know, as you do when you're a kid. And I remembered that I really wanted to get into animation. I was one of those radical 90s kids that grew up during the Disney Renaissance and just fell in love with the stories and characters. I was also really into movie magic and just ate up anything that was behind the scenes stuff and used to love watching how movies were made, whether they were just regular movies or if they were animated movies. So I was like, I want to do that. So I started looking at videos online about people making their own cell animations and came across Art Ala Carte's video where she draws Rapunzel. If you want to see what I'm talking about, I'll leave a link to her video in the description. But anyway, it seems pretty simple. Draw your image, trace it reversed on a transparent sheet with your line work, then fill in the color. The process seemed to be pretty similar to how people make pancake art, so I really wanted to give it a shot, but I also wanted to make a background for it. I didn't have any transparent sheets, and most craft and art stores are closed right now, so I found some clear plastic sleeves that you put in a binder and cut them in half. I also decided that since this is kind of new territory, it would probably be very smart to make a practice run, so that's actually what you're seeing at this stage. I did a little mini version of a girl peeking through some leaves just to get a feel of how the Posca pens would react on the clear sheets. I went with Posca pens instead of acrylic paints or craft paints as I had seen other people do in their videos because I knew I would be working smaller than regular animation cells and I didn't know how well I would be able to paint tiny details on. Plus, I had seen people do the line work with Sharpies and thought that Posca pens wouldn't be much different and I would have way more control with Posca pens. I have also seen that sometimes you'd have to put multiple layers of paint down depending on how opaque the paint is, and Posca pens are known to have pretty opaque paint, so it seemed like a win-win. Let me emphasize that it seemed, but we will get to that later. So my steps were to sketch the image out until I had something to outline, then cut the plastic sleeve down into roughly the size of the drawing. From there, I had made a rectangle background with a copic marker, taped down the plastic, and started filling everything in. Originally, I was going to do it all on one sheet, but animation cells used to have different details on different layers so that you can move different animated parts separately. So I was a little ambitious and decided I wanted to attempt 2 layers. So I made the girl on one and the leaves on another. This part got me really excited for my final drawing because I think this would be a really cool way to give your sketchbook some dimension. You could like draw characters and do this with different clothes or things like that. So then it was time to do a full piece. I was originally sketching one of my Moe monsters, Zoe, leaning out of a window, but I was having a hard time figuring out how I wanted to incorporate a second layer, so I scrapped it. Then I remembered that I had this drawing I did back in college that I was going to do a lino cut print of. It was a scene with a city being attacked by a tentakitty and a girl looking scared. I really liked this image, but my professor at the time didn't like the idea of me doing something cartoony, which is another story for another day, so I never actually got to use it. But boy, does that girl look an awful lot like a precious little Doulahan character of My Name Tabitha. Talk about a coincidence. I must have had this kind of idea of her in my head when I created her a couple years later. So I decided that this was the perfect thing to do. I used my canson mixed media paper and measured a 5x7 space. It's important to make sure that your workspace and all of your layers are the same size so you can properly match all your images up later on. I then drew out the city and colored it all in. Oh yeah, that's a nice city, I like it. After this, I got 2 pieces of paper and my light table and sketched out where the characters would be in the scene. This part is important. if you're going to do something like this, you need to make sure that your image is flipped, because when you are filling in all the paint, it's going to cover up all your lines, so you don't want to end up doing this on the side that you want facing your viewer. So you're going to flip your drawing on your light table and then put your plastic sleeve on top of that paper, and then turn your light table on and then trace your flipped drawing onto your plastic sheet. This is where things kind of start to sort of fall apart. I mean, I am definitely using the wrong supplies to make this happen. Paint pens are probably not the best thing for this, and the plastic sleeves I was drawing on are way too flimsy. But by this point, it was a little too late to turn back, and I thought I could trudge through, because as I was starting to fill in the colors on Tabitha, two things happened. One, some of the paint leaked out of the pen too quickly, and it is kind of difficult to fix when that happens. And two, the black lines I made started to flake off. At first I thought it was because I was using a thinner black Posca pen to outline everything, so I actually crumbled up and scrapped the first one and retraced the entire drawing of Tabitha with a thicker Posca pen. I thought that it was working, so I went ahead and used my other Posca pens to start filling in the colors, which ended up also being kind of tricky, because if you don't wait long enough, the colors can actually start mixing together, which happened on Tabitha's shirt and a couple other areas. You'll hear in a bit though, some of the other issues that I had. But it was pretty interesting to fill the colors in on this, because all you can do is hope that it will look okay when you flip it on the other side once it dries. But doing this process definitely made me want to try this with pancake art at some point. But here is where the real struggle happened with this. After I let it dry, I flipped it all excited to see how it looked, and it was a mess. A bunch of the black line art flaked off and the colors filled into those spots. Some of the spots where the paint had kind of like mixed together that I thought I saved was not saved. Earlier I wondered maybe I should do 2 coats of the black line art, but then after it started flaking that first time, I was worried that if I did that it would flake off, so I decided not to do that, because I figured if I just let the other colors fill it in, that it would be fine. But as you can see, it wasn't fine. The Tentakitty was okay, except for a few imperfections, but I was worried that I would have to do Tabitha all over again. But then I thought, if I could just color over the front of it to fix some of the issues, then put it in a frame to protect it, then all would be well. So off camera I did that. I went through and I started coloring in areas that looked weird, but this time on the front of it, so I was able to cover some of my mistakes, and it was looking much better. But then, after I let it dry, I went to cut it down and I taped it together. Then I spent so much time trying to fix the picture enough just to get the darn thing in the frame. After I used the X-Acto knife to cut all the excess off the paper and the plastic sheets, a bunch of the black paint started flaking off again. So I kept going back and forth between relining it, letting it dry, setting it in the frame, putting the frame together, looking it over, and seeing that another part of the paint came off during the whole process, and on it went. Until eventually, I finally got it all in there. Now there are still a couple spots that you can see that still had it, but at this point, I will take what I can get and safely say that this piece is done. Hooray! It almost killed me, but hooray! If you decide to try this, don't be like me and get a thicker transparency sheet and proper supplies. I couldn't go to the store to get some of the stuff I needed because of lockdown, so I went with what I had, but despite it all, I would still do this again actually. It was really cool to see the images laid on top of each other like that, and the actual process of filling in the colors was a lot of fun. I just need to figure out how to get the line art to stick, or suck it up and do it old school with paint. I also think that I might make a digital version of this in the future as well, because I like the concept so much. But that's it from me this week, guys. Thank you for coming along with me as I try making a Bobo animation cell. It was fun and weirdly nostalgic, as it was something kid me would have really wanted to do. Wow, for someone who really liked animation so much, you don't animate, like, at all pretty much. Hey, I've done some things, you know, the dancing and the Pikachu and the... You don't know me like that, Banana Man. Oh, I know you like that, because I am you. What? What? Anyway, thank you all so much for coming. A special thank you to all of my patrons who make videos like this possible, and thank you so much for liking, commenting, and sharing my videos. I appreciate you all stopping by, and I hope that we can draw together again soon. Bye guys.